Yao to speak of an event that's happening next Wednesday and to invite all of you to come.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Madeline. It's great to see you all here, and I want to make an announcement about what we might call the next logical step in the Faculty and Models of Academic Success program that the CPC is heading up and Madeline and Professor Williams are heading up. Next week, we'll be having a visitor from UC Berkeley, Dr. Josephine Moreno, who is the diversity coordinator for arts and humanities in the College of Arts and Letters at UC Berkeley. She's interested in meeting potential graduate students, and in particular graduate students of color who might be interested in studying at Berkeley. She'll be giving a workshop in the late morning on graduate opportunities at Berkeley and about graduate school in general. And then from 12:30 to 2, that's when we've got it scheduled, she's interested in meeting with any diversity students, or any students really, but especially diversity students interested in graduate school. And this spans any field. Though her focus is on, she's in the College of Arts and, her professional focus, her job is on arts and humanities, she's certainly willing to talk to any student in any field. Okay? Sciences, social sciences, arts would fit. Okay? So, if you have even the remotest interest, it's just a thought in your mind, this is an opportunity for you to get more information and to have a particular connection with somebody at Berkeley. I happen to do my graduate work at Berkeley, so it's a special place in my heart. I can tell you, it's sunny 11 months out of the year. It's an interesting place. So, if you do have an interest, please keep this in mind. It's going to be next Wednesday, September 22nd. All right? And for lunch, if you're interested in coming to lunch, please do me a favor and email me. We're trying to get, it'll be free lunch. Email me so we can get an accurate head count. Email syao@hamilton.edu. Should I put this up here? All right, syao@hamilton.edu. And if you can CC J. Turvey, that would be great. Although that's, if you don't, we'll figure it out. All right? So, tonight we'll be talking about making the most of your college experience. And we've already got planned for you an opportunity to leverage that, or a jumping off place for the future once you do maximize your college experience. So one possible path for leveraging that experience. So if you have any interest or even the inkling of an interest, please do email me. Love to see you there. Love to have a big representation from Hamilton to show what we've got to offer Berkeley. So please do let me know, email me, and thanks a lot. Hope to see you all there.
Woo! Once again, thank you for coming out. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Brian Peterson, author of Higher Learning, Maximizing Your College Experience. We actually met in our undergraduate years at the University of Pennsylvania. So to talk about maximizing your college experience, having the professional connections later on. You all do this. I mean, we couldn't imagine this in the 90s, that we would be coming together to support each other professionally this way. But this is part of it. And so, I'm sharing my family with him. He's sharing his family with me. We've watched each of us go down a professional path that we only dreamt about when I believe I was a first year and he was getting ready to complete his undergraduate degree. Again, he got his undergraduate degree at the University of Pennsylvania, and he's currently completing his doctorate at the Graduate School of Education at the University of Pennsylvania. As you saw on the flyer, he's the author of numerous books, including Higher Learning, but also the African American Student's Guide to Excellence in College. He also co-directed or directed the film, It's Your World, The Legacy of W.E.B. Du Bois College House, which is a residential house on the campus of the University of Pennsylvania, which celebrates African American heritage. And it had a special place for all of us, regardless whether you were African American or not, because it was a place we called home. And so it was very moving that he put that together for us. Tonight, Brian brings many issues to the forefront, and it's not just about networking, because that's some of the ways that I've talked to you, some of you, about why he is here, but also about doing more in your college experience. That is more than just surviving. It's more than just getting C's. It's more than just making it. It's about thriving. And what he says in his books and what he'll share with us comes not only from his own experience and that of his life partner, who I was also one of my roommates. She's great. I wish she was here. But also having worked with undergrads for a number of years. And what he saw was that we needed to start doing strategic planning for ourselves, for our time here, and move away from this mentality that we have to struggle while we're undergrads and somehow make it to the finish line. And so one of the pivotal moments that he talks about when he shared what you can do to thrive as an undergraduate is his own turning point, when he was at the University of Pennsylvania, about finding his place. The moment when he realized he was welcome there, he would fit in there, he was going to excel there. And of course, he's going to share this story. He doesn't have to, I don't have to share it for him. But he's also worked with young people. He co-founded the Asha Academy in 1999, and that was an affirmation, a celebration of African American pride to get young people, K through 12, to realize that the college experience is part of their dream. And in doing that work and getting volunteers from the undergraduate campus of the University of Pennsylvania, he saw that those students, while teaching others, became empowered. So he's going to talk about today what we can do to serve our community so that we become empowered and we become leaders. So I've said enough, but again, I want to say it is great honor, great privilege to introduce Brian Peterson tonight. Thank you.
Before I begin, first I want to thank Madeline for inviting me here, and thank you all for having me here. I'm very honored to be here to share a little bit of my story and talk a little bit about learning. I got a Facebook inbox from Madeline maybe 2 months ago. It said, "You must come to Hamilton." So here I am. That's how it works. I mean, Madeline is definitely part of my family, part of my extended family, one of my wife's closest friends. And, she's explained to me a little bit of Hamilton's culture, and I felt that what I wrote in the book would be something that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you all this evening. This is actually my first book talk for this book. So I'm honored to do it here. I'm honored to see so many beautiful, shining faces you got. Like, it is a little after 7 o'clock. Like, my events don't start on time, so this is a good thing. At Penn, right now, I do a number of different things. So I teach a couple of classes. I teach one class on culturally relevant pedagogy. I formed a couple of organizations. I worked at Penn since I graduated. So I have a long, long history there. And a lot of that is in this book, which I'll sort of start out with a couple of stories about how I got to Penn. It was purely by accident. I know for some of you all, maybe coming to Hamilton might not have been something that you envisioned as a high school freshman, even high school senior. For me, when I was applying to schools, I was sort of in a mode where whatever my parents wanted, I didn't want. College, they wanted, not so much for me. Although I knew I could do it, it was just something where, you're stepping outside of that comfort zone of high school, went to a very small public school in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I didn't necessarily know what the future was going to entail for me, but I knew that, finally after listening to my parents talk on and on about college, I figured I was ultimately going to have to go. So Penn, I didn't know it was Ivy League school, because this is how invested I was in the college application process. I didn't know what was going on. I knew Penn was in Philadelphia, and I lived in Harrisburg. Has anybody ever been to Harrisburg? It's a lot like here. Right? And I was looking for something different. So for some of you might be coming from urban areas, you're looking for something to come different and you come here. For me, I was here already and I wanted to go to the city. So that's what led me to Philadelphia. When I visited the campus, I fell in love with the campus. But I knew my high school background did not prepare me for Ivy League education. And I was very clear on that. Like, I knew coming in, first day of class, taking placement exams, doing all these different things, I'm looking around and saying, these people know something I don't know. So that was one of the major fact is it really led me to want to get involved in education. I didn't realize that at the outset. I was doing engineering and got involved with a number of tutoring organizations in West Philadelphia, really just sort of opening up a different world to young people who I would work with on, after schools. They didn't know that Penn was a college. They didn't know what it was. And it was 7 blocks away from where they went to high school. So it was never really sort of a question of whether they were going to go to Penn or whether they were going to go to any college at all. So a lot of these things sort of factored into me saying to myself, well, what can I do? So as an undergraduate, one of the things that we did a scaled down version of this guide for other undergraduates. So for African American community, we realized that there were lessons that we saw freshmen coming in, repeating the same mistakes that we did time and time again, because there was no resource, there was no sort of methodology to say, well, how can we learn from what you guys are doing and pass that down to other people? So this book is a long time in the making. I did another version of it a couple of years ago called the African American Student's Guide to Excellence. And with that guide, it was more so talking about my own experience as African American student and trying to figure out, what does that look like? But what I realized in creating that, I didn't feel comfortable speaking for a multicultural audience, but I knew that for places like Hamilton, places like University of Pennsylvania, even for HBCUs, there's a particular pressure for African American students. So at an HBCU, for example, you might be coming from a predominantly white high school and want to pick the HBCU experience to get something different and not really know how to fit in. So there's an identity issue there. For me, coming from a relatively mixed high school, going to a predominantly white university that's in an urban situation, there were a lot of identity crises. I remember as a black male walking through campus and having, my biggest fear was of insecurity, thinking that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's something that, it's a burden that you carry around. I remember speaking to peers and them thinking that I played sports at school. I sat on the bench in high school. So I wasn't playing any sport at Penn, right? And it's just something that it makes you think, where do I fit in? What's going to be my story? Do I really belong here? And then academically trying to figure out, how do I get up to speed with everybody else when I didn't really know what engineering was? I knew I liked math, I knew I liked science, I knew a little bit about computers, but I'm dating myself, this is before the internet. There was no internet when I went to school. It just started. So, yeah, I'm old.
You're a baby.
So, when we did research, I don't know if you have heard these things, they're called encyclopedias. we had these in my house. This was my primary research tool. Was an encyclopedia? Was that a book? There's a series of them. You have them on the bookshelf, alphabetical. And this was my primary research tool as a youth. So engineering was sort of a jump into the future for me. Like I knew I wanted to do some sort of computer programming, but I didn't really know what that was. And when I'm in these courses, I'm trying to figure out, what am I supposed to be doing here? So all of that is a little bit of my background. A lot of that is in this book. But what this book is about, and when I will talk with you for the rest of this session, is about you guys figuring out what's going to be your story. Because I can't give you a blueprint for how you're going to graduate from college. Everybody in this room is going to have their own individual, unique, customized blueprint that's going to get you through. So what my book is definitely student-centered. It's not a book. All you guys have the book. I see it sitting there. It's a student book. It's not a book for academics to figure out how do they work with students, although they can read it and see the students in their perspective and gain some knowledge that way. It's for you all, and it asks you all questions. And it walks you through some examples and some different scenarios. So what I want to do now is just talk about 3 major components that are going to be key to getting you through college. The first is, when you're in a situation, understanding why you're there. So why did you choose to go to college in the first place? For a lot of students, myself included, it was about fulfilling something my parents wanted initially. I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to go. After I got there, I realized, oh, I'm loving this. I want to be here. But initially, I didn't know if I really could go. And I was a talented high school student. I definitely didn't apply myself. I definitely didn't do that. I know there were times, I remember in particular, they asked me to get involved with the honors English program, I think in 11th grade. After I had taken a couple other honors courses, I think for social sciences, and I was on like academic math track, but English for some reason, they didn't put me initially in the honors English track. And then when they finally realized I could read and write pretty well, they said, well, can you be in this track? And I was another one of those rebellious moments where I said, no, I don't want to be in it because you didn't ask me from the outset. So that was something where, had I gone back, looking back, I think, I would have probably chosen to go on the honors English track because that would have better prepared me for college. But there were other things that I just didn't know I was supposed to be doing. But again, going back to the point of finding what you guys want to do, that's the first thing. So whether you're thinking about why you want to go to college, why are you here right now, what major you're considering, what minor you're considering, what organizations you're thinking about doing, what class you're thinking about taking, any of those things, if there's not an intense personal connection, it's going to be difficult to do it, let alone maximize it. Think about classes that you don't want to be in, that you have to take. And I was reading on the Hamilton brochure, everybody gets to customize. You don't have to fulfill requirements. I don't know how that works. But, theoretically, that works here, right? But I know for me, we had to fulfill requirements. And I know one thing that came out of applying to, I was thinking about maybe doing African American PhD, African American Studies instead of education. There was a foreign language requirement. And I am not remotely interested in foreign languages at all. And one program wanted you to learn two. And I said, I'm not learning one, so I'm definitely not learning two from not applying there. So these are the types of things that, if you don't have a rationale for what you're trying to do, it's very, very difficult to get through, from simple things to big things. The second point is, do you know what you're doing? So after you figure out, all right, this is why I want to do it. I want to major in this because this, I want to take this class, I want to do this, that. Do you know what it is that you need to do to get through it? And this point, I'm actually going to cover some pieces that are in the book because this is just sort of unpacking it. One thing I meant to mention is, a lot of times when college students get enrolled, when you come to school, whether you're coming for summer orientation, whether you're coming in as a regular first year schedule, people just assume that you're going to get it. They assume that, when you graduate from high school, when you get here, you're just going to fall into place, you're going to get it. And it's not that easy. But I know, trust me, I know, from the work I've done with young people, from being a young person, from working with college students, etc., it's hard for you guys to admit that you don't get something. Because you want to get it. You want to automatically just fall into place. You want to know what's going on, and you want to put on that air of confidence. And you want to feel like, okay, I've got this. I don't need anybody's help. I don't need to ask. But everybody needs help. Everybody needs help. I wouldn't have got here had Madeline not reached out. I wouldn't have written a book had I not studied how to do that process and talk to different people. This wasn't just me. Getting this book put together was a whole bunch of other people. Had I not asked for help with the cover, I would have done the cover myself and it would look terrible. I mean, this is how it works. So we all need help in different ways, shapes, and forms. So again, going back to the what, a lot of times we don't necessarily know how to get through a situation. Some of you guys don't know how to read. And what I mean by that is on a college level, reading is not just looking at the pages. And there's chapters that are going to cover this in the book. So I encourage you to read the book. You all have 3 copies of the book. So I'm going to plug that like 5 times. But reading on a college level is a lot different than the reading that you might have been used to. How many first-year students in the room? First-year students? Okay. So I'm doing a lot of research on, high school, how they prepare you for college or how they under-prepare you for college. So there's a lot of different studies, and again, different schools have different scenarios. Some people, you might have read the whole Harry Potter collection, so you're a lot more literate than other people who, like me, when I was in school, book reports had to be under a 100-page book, and there's not a lot of books that are worth reading that are under 100 pages, but that was what I was shooting for, because again, I wasn't the model student at the time in high school and my first couple of years of undergraduate. But, learning how to read critically, learning how to go beyond. So if, I give you an assignment and I say, read pages 1 to 25 in higher learning, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And you start reading it and you get engaged and you're like, well, maybe I want to read more, but I can only set to read to page 25. Or maybe there's a point of this piece that he told me to read, I don't understand, but I see it's covered in chapter 7, which is on page 100, but you just only read pages 1 to 25 because that's all I said to do. That's not what it's about. It's about you getting what you need. So read the whole book tonight if you want to. Even though I said only read pages 1 to 25. Read the whole book. Go online, Google me, look it up. Do all this other information. Reading is research. Taking tests. Some people don't know how to take tests. Essay tests. I remember trying to study for essay tests and, looking at all this background information, but never actually writing an essay before the test. Doesn't that make sense? If you know the test is going to be essays, might you want to write some essays? And especially if it's time, so you can practice, so make up your own questions, answer them in an essay form in the time it's given. That would make sense, but I didn't know that. Nobody told me that. And then this is a whole concept called meta-analysis, thinking about what you're doing. So as a student, sometimes you're so busy being a student or trying to be a student, because a lot of times you don't even really know what does it mean to be a student, because you're just running around, I have this meeting at 7, I have this at 8, I have this at 9, and at some point you're going to go to sleep and you have to do it all over again tomorrow. So you don't have time to think about being you, let alone being a student, right? So there's all these other things that are involved in this what process. Studying, again, is something that some people just don't know what does that mean. Can anybody tell me what does it mean to study? Anybody have any idea? Some of you have been doing it for 4 years. I met a few seniors in here. So 3 years of studying. What have you been doing?
I like to set up a good chunk of time. I know I need at least 2 hours to work on something well.
And what are you doing when you're working on it well?
I'm sitting in the library, my phone, and I have all my papers out, and I'm taking notes, underlining things, and there.
So your hand up.
I was going to say to review the information that you already know and to refresh it into your mind and possibly try and make more connections between topics.
Teaching it to somebody else comes very what you learn, switch back there.
Anybody else? Let me ask you a question. So we just got 4 different takes on what studying is. How many times have you all sat in a room that hasn't been convened by a faculty member, an advisor, and maybe a few peers, and just talked about how you get through this place? Anybody? Has anybody done that? How you get through Hamilton? How do you maximize your academics? How do you maximize your organizations? So I see 3, 4 people. 5. You guys, your greatest resource on this campus is right in this room. And you guys don't even know it. Does everybody understand that? All of you guys are going through the same scenario, so if you all work together and get through it collectively, and there's a whole section. If you see this, I made it color-coded so it's nice and easy. So this dark gray section right here is called Focus, Fundamentals of Collective Undergraduate Success. This whole section is about how you guys, if you haven't already, formed a peer network with people in this room or some people who might not have been able to make the event tonight. You want to read that and think about some things you guys can do together. It outlines the whole set of steps. And again, the one thing I say at the outset of the book, and I said it already tonight, but I think it bears repeating, is that it's not a strict, this is how you do it, follow these 5 steps. It's more of a process of me putting out some questions and getting you to think about some answers which gets you to think about some questions that you might have. So all the stuff in this book, I invite you to remix it, to customize it, to make it your own, because that's the only way it's going to help you. But again, going back to the second piece of this what, there are so many things that are connected to trying to figure out what are some of the things you guys need to take away from this. So studying, again, there's so many takes on it, but understanding that ultimately, when you're in college, you're going to be your own teacher. You have to guide how you learn the material. You have professors who you should look more or less as facilitators. They're going to help you. And the more that you invest yourself in the learning process, the more that you'll want to explore things on your own and figure out, how do I get through this? How do I get what I need out of this? Connections are another critical piece. So again, like I'm talking about in this room, the peer connections, which is outlined in the focus chapter, that's huge because in a lot of ways, even if it's something as simple as, and Madeline and I were talking about this earlier, if I know I have an exam tomorrow and I'm taking, computer science class, and maybe Madeline is taking a sociology class, she's going to be up late, and maybe we have a couple other friends who have something else going on. If we all get together and find a place, and we claim that place as our own, now I know that there are 3 or 4 or 5 other people who have my back and I have their back. And it was those moments, those simple moments, I remember time and time again where, you're studying, and it's those moments when you're like, why did I go to college? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I could be doing 10,000 other things except solving equations. Why am I here? Why am I an engineer? Why didn't I do this, this, and this? But you look at these people and they're grinding hard. They're like writing, like, oh man, that's still working. maybe I can do one more problem set, and that's what got me through. That's what got me through. And I remember the days when I decided I'm gonna skip the study hall session. I'm gonna stay in my room. You got sleep. And when I was in college, they did invent the internet. So a couple years into it, we had the internet, so that wasn't good. Video games got better. I'm a sports fan. That's not good. And the male-female ratio on most college campuses. Fortunately, I met my wife. Who's a great friend of Madeline. I met her in my college career. She kept me on the straight and narrow. But yeah, there's all these things that if you decide to not invest your time properly in academics, there's all these other things that get in the way. So if you have that collective group where you can say, look, if we carve out this time and do this right, we can go hang out, we can do whatever we want to do, feeling much better about ourselves because we've done something, we've been productive. And that's another simple thing about the what. What are you doing? You know how to do it properly. Time management is critical. And it's not, we just talked about this a little bit, but getting involved in a whole bunch of different organizations. I mean, it's stuff I'm telling you, I'm sure you already know, but this is the whole part about taking that moment out. So it's almost like a retreat in a certain sense, where you want to be able to put stuff on pause. And it's hard to do that during midterms, because there is no pause. It's like, go. Got this tomorrow, go. But if you figure out your strategy beforehand, when you get to midterm point, you can go a little bit smarter and a little bit harder and get more out of it. But again, I definitely want to just reiterate the point of using each other. So if you have a class that you're struggling with, or somebody had that class or studying that particular field, and they know what's going on, do not be afraid to ask for help. As I mentioned earlier, and I made a joke out of it, but it's very simple. I sometimes think I can do everything. So I have designed mock book covers that have been terrible. But I have friends who are visual artists, so I say, can you fix this? And I sketch this, but for me to actually make it look like that, it wouldn't look like that. So if it's physics, and you have a friend who's a physicist, if it's whatever it is, don't be afraid to say, look, I need help. And it's hard to do, because I know when I was in school, it was hard to do. When I found out about office hours, you guys know about office hours? Office hours? Office hours, every day on my so here's another commercial plug. Twitter me, Facebook, all that. Every day I put a daily thing out of the book. So yesterday's was office hours. So office hours, I put office hours where the magic happens. Office hours is another thing that, again, it's that knowing how, knowing what you're supposed to be doing. On a college campus, I did not expect to have to invest more time into tracking down a professor after I've gone to their class for 3 days or 2 days out the week, and I have to go see them afterwards. I'm too cool for that. I don't want to do that. No, I want a better grade. I'm going to go do that. So after I figured out that, going into office hours, I remember the first time I went, and the professor was like, all right, for this midterm, focus on this, 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 and this. And I was going to focus not on that, and that. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is how it works. But again, you don't know. There's no manual. Well, it wasn't a manual, so I wrote the manual. But, it's stuff like that. Another thing I have in the book is the key to shortcuts, or the key to knowledge is more knowledge, basically saying that there really there's no shortcuts. In order to take a shortcut, you need to know something else. It's more knowledge. So office hours is another part of that knowledge arsenal that, people don't tell you when you come in. Or if they do tell you, you don't really take them seriously. When you come in for orientation, they tell you all this stuff. This is the office for this. And you're not really paying attention because you're like, what time is the first party? What time is the second party? Where do I live? I got to unpack all my stuff. Classes start, okay. We'll worry about that later. Academic support, I'm not going to need academic support. I graduated in the top 5% of my class in high school. What do I need to know about these things for? But you need to know about these things, because at some point, it might not be right away, but there's going to be something that you need help with. If you want to get, I don't know, they have a proofreading service here on campus. They have a writing center, that's beautiful. Use that? Who uses that? Raise your hand. All right, so we got about 15% of the room use the writing center. Everybody else is cool with writing, I assume?
Oh, yeah.
So some of you already have built-in writing support. That's beautiful. Now, to use these things, that means you can't start the paper the night before. So it's a double bonus, right? It puts you on a better time management program, and then you get somebody to read the paper, right? So that's another thing that, they explain in the orientation, but sometimes you just don't know. It doesn't sink in. So, again, for these types of things, making sure that you guys are always plugged in, knowing what all the resources are, and going beyond college, internships. What's the hookup for that? How do you get, if you want to do a business internship, if you want to do social services internship, whatever it is, who's got information, who's got connections, make sure you're sharing them, because not everybody's going to want to do the same things. Somebody might have information or something else. You've got to share that. So whether you have organizations on campus where you're meeting and just talking about how do we strategize, how do we get what we want done on this campus, and this goes beyond academics. So for this campus to work, and this is one thing I write about in the book, I figured out, one of the things that really kept me in school, I figured out academically I was going to be able to make it junior year. Well, sophomore year after I got 1D, and I was like, I can never let this happen again. So I figured out tutoring, office hours, all these things that I wasn't doing, I was kind of halfway doing, I fully invested myself in. So academically, I became okay. But what got me to that point was tutoring other students. I think somebody mentioned this. I think you mentioned it. I tutored calculus as a sophomore to freshman. This is actually, I'm not advocating this at all, because I would never want anybody to do this. But I had a student, and I didn't know he was doing this till he told me after a midterm. He said he stopped going to class. He was coming to my tutoring sessions, and he was getting a B. So I must have been doing, okay, but I wasn't that great. But that helped me soar up. So then I ended up taking more calculus classes than I needed to take because it just kept my interest in math. So it's things like that. And then when I was tutoring young people in West Philadelphia, that gave me a sense of purpose for me to figure out my academic struggles in my sophomore year. So even when I was getting that D in that class, everything kind of happened at the same time where I realized if I can get through Penn, I'll be somebody that these kids can say they know graduated from Penn. This is something that, this is one of the reasons why I'm in a doctoral program right now, because I'm all, again, like you might have got this already from me, like I have these rebellious moments. So after I finished undergrad, I didn't want to go back to get my master's, but I was working on campus, so I figured it's free. I might as well just get the master's because I'm a faculty, staff member, so you get to take 2 classes a semester free. So I said, well, I'll just go ahead and get this master's. After I did that, I said, I'm definitely not going back to a doctorate because I'm done with school, no way. Whatever I want to get done, I'd already founded an organization. I'd written a couple books. So I said, whatever I want to get done, I'm cool. But I had one of my mentors when I was doing a master's program, had his doctorate, but he was teaching in the high school. He was also teaching a couple of college classes. And he said, do you know, as African-American male, if you get your doctorate, what that's going to represent for other people who can then say they know someone who has a PhD. And I never thought about like that before. I always thought about it selfishly. I don't want to go to school again. But again, I was still working at the university. You take 2 classes a semester for free, so I might as well get the doctorate. So I started the doctorate program. But it really, that was sort of how I became just more aware of what impact we can have on other people. So when I was tutoring as an undergraduate, tutoring in West Philadelphia, and then realizing that if I get this doctorate, it's much bigger than just me getting a PhD to have 3 letters behind my name. It's really about somebody coming up who might not have ever thought about college before, who hears me talk and can relate to what I'm saying, and can then say, oh, what do I need to do to get a doctorate? Here's what you need to do. The key thing, and it goes back to the first thing I said, is about finding your passion. So for me, getting my doctorate was easy because I had found my passion. My doctorate was going to be in education. My doctorate was going to be about doing stuff like this. My dissertation is about an organization that I founded that is a community service organization that is based on campus. And what we found that it's a majority African American students who are participating in our organization, mentors, so college undergraduates, and the students who get service, so 6th to 12th grade. The college undergraduates at our school, from the time I had been there in the early 90s through 2000, the graduation rate for African American males, or African American students, fluctuated from 68 to 91%. So gradually it increased each year. For all the African American students who participated in our program, the graduation rate was 98% for all the grades. So what we found was that the program gives them a sense of purpose on campus beyond all the academic resources, beyond the Greek organizations, beyond all the other things that the campus provided. This provided them with something, and it's the same, it echoes my story over and over. That sense of purpose, that sense of being able to do something bigger than yourself. So that's really what the whole concept of higher learning is about, doing something beyond what you think is possible, beyond what other people think is possible of you. I mentioned there were two points already. I want to mention the final point and then just kind of conclude with a couple closing thoughts, and then I just open up for questions. So I said the first thing, one of your challenges, no matter what the decision is knowing why you want to do something. The second thing is knowing what it is that you want to do. So that out of that what, there's all these sub-details, like how do you get the most out of it? The third thing is to actually do it. And that's oftentimes stumbling block. So I know I want to go to Hamilton, I know I want to major in sociology. How do I actually do it? How do I actually get through these classes? Procrastination, that's a killer. Overcommitment. commitments, having so many things to do that you can't do anything. Has anybody ever been in that situation? Because I know I have. And it's a rough place to be. And again, if you don't realize you're in that situation until you get a report card or, you know, whatever they call them now, grade sheets, whatever, at the end of the semester, when you get that and you see letters that you haven't seen before, that's when you know. But ideally, you should know before you get that. But if you don't have the proper support mechanisms in place, you might not find out until you get that grade sheet. So the doing it process, it's all cyclical. Like there's no step 1, step 2, step 3. Doing it sometimes goes right back to the first question I said. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to be pre-med? Do your parents want you to be pre-med, or do you want to be pre-med? Because sometimes if the answer is your parents and you're invested in all this and you're not really invested in it, you're not putting your all into it. Why do you want to take this particular class? Is it because you think it's going to be an easy A? If you think it's going to be easy A, sometimes you turn off and don't do any work, and then that becomes the easy C. And I've had one of those classes, so I'm speaking from personal experience. So, again, the doing it aspect is the last step. It connects all the other pieces, but that's when it's time to show and prove. So if you read the book, this is my second plug, read the book, it'll show you all the hows, but you have to go through and answer the personal questions about the whys, and then you will be able to do it. The focus section is going to be critical for you guys, especially from being at an institution like this where, you know, at Penn, when I go outside, I can get on a bus and go wherever in Philadelphia. You know, if I needed to get like an iced tea tonight, I'm not really sure what else is going to happen. I'm just being honest with you because I'm staying, where am I staying? Yeah, I'm staying in the Bristol Student Center, and I didn't see a whole lot except grass outside. You know, I'm used to seeing stores and taxis and all types of things happening. So, you know, but the beautiful thing about this campus is that you guys have the potential to have a very strong, tight-knit community if that's what you want. And I think you need it because that's what's going to get you through this place. I'm not really even concerned about you guys graduating from college, to be really honest. That's the language that we're using right now because Obama wants by 2020 the nation to have the highest level of graduates in the world, and a whole bunch of other people who are in the foundation. Graduating from college to me it should happen by default. If you maximize your experience on campus, you will graduate from college. There's not even going to be a question about whether or not you're going to graduate from college. What I want you to do, I want you to change your life. I want you to change somebody else's life. That's why you're here. College is hard. It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, then everybody would be here and it wouldn't be special. No, seriously. I mean, that's just the reality. Not everybody is going to want to do the work, and you don't want to sort somebody because you know there are people who are doing manual labor jobs who didn't have opportunities you guys had to challenge themselves intellectually to be in a position to go to college. So it's not that they don't have the capacity; they didn't have the opportunity. Some people have the capacity but just don't want to do it. For you guys to be here right now, you have a tremendous opportunity. You don't want to waste it. You have to get through. But at the end of the day, if you figure out what are you passionate about, it might be something academically, it might be something socially, it might be something that connects a whole bunch of different interests. I mean, if I listed all the different jobs that I've had, that some have been entrepreneurial, some have been all, you know, unpaid, some have been different nonprofits I've started. I've just done everything I could possibly do because that's my passion. I'm sort of a jack of all trades person, and I feel like I know enough people where if I don't know how to do something, I can call somebody and they can help me get something started, or I can pass ideas off and we can work together. And that's just, to me, I feel like the more ideas I see happening, the happier I am. That's my thing, and I know that, and I know that not all my ideas are going to work, and I've accepted that. I've come to terms with that. It's taken a long time, but I can admit that that's where we are right now. But that's what I do, and I know that. When you guys know personally what you want to do, if you guys want to have the biggest party for social consciousness on this campus, and you pick a list of 10 people you want to invite, make that happen. If you guys want to have a conference on whatever it is, make that happen. I started this point earlier, but I didn't actually finish it. With what I learned at Penn was that as a student, what makes Penn work is students demanding what they want to see and making it happen, and not being aggressive. I mean, sometimes you have to be aggressive. But if you say, well, we want to have this event, we want to have this building upgraded, we want to do this, this, and this, that's what makes colleges work. And that's a part of maximizing your experience. That's leadership skills. These are intangible things that aren't going to happen in the classroom necessarily, but they happen in the total college experience. So again, it's not just about books, but it is about balance. You don't want to just do all these activities and not do the books. Right? You want to know you have a system in place. And I said earlier, college is hard, but don't make it harder than it needs to be. Does everybody understand that? Do not make it harder than it needs to be. Every answer to every test you're going to take is in the book. It's on the internet. It's somewhere. You just got to find it and study. Think about it. The answers aren't just made up when the test happens. The answers already, somebody knows the answers already. If you study, you'll know the answers before the test. Don't learn the answers after the test. That's the key. Does that make sense? It's going to sound more easy like that. But seriously, don't make it harder than it needs to be. But that's why you have to use each other and talk about your experiences. Do not be afraid to talk about whatever struggle you're having, whether it's a financial struggle. There's a chapter on money management. Read that. It's very important. Whether it's a family issue at home, whether it's feeling like you don't have a place here at Hamilton, whatever it is, do not be afraid to open up and talk to other people. I could speak on behalf of Madeline because I just talked to her so much about this situation, but I know she's a person whose door is open. I'm sure other faculty members, other advisors are the same way, because that's what a school like this is about. At Penn, it wasn't always the case. At Penn, you had to be very, very entrepreneurial about finding allies. And because Penn is Penn, those allies might not always be available for you because everybody's doing funny things. And it's ridiculous. It's almost dysfunctional. Well, it's not almost. It is dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional for the majority of people. It's functional for about 2% of the people who get all the honors and do all of what they do. Other people, they make it functional because they're committed to making it functional, but it's a lot of extra work. All right, but for a place like this, for you guys to come together in mass and start at 7 o'clock, that's a beautiful thing. So keep building on that. Keep building on that. There's going to be a reception in a few minutes, but at this point, I do want to open the door for any questions. And if you don't want to ask questions now, you can ask for the reception, but if anybody has any questions.
So as a senior, I'm really interested in how the college experience translates to after college, and like what you need to know, or like how can you take what you learned in college and make that relevant for figuring out what you want to do after.
I'm glad you didn't say the real world, because you live in the real world right now. So that never discount your college experience. There's so many things that I learned after I left college. I never left campus, so for me, my story is a little different. But definitely from the professional environment, waking up, being to work at 9, clocking out at 5, all of that is different. But for me personally, leading organizations and knowing I can start ideas, that helped for a lot of my nonprofit work. That I wouldn't have even entertained doing that had I not been in college. Being able to balance, you guys usually take 4 or 5 classes a semester. took usually 4, sometimes 5. But balancing all of that is project management. You know, so when you get on the job, whether you're doing, you know, financial consulting, whatever it is you're doing, you're going to have caseloads or projects or different things you're managing. If you can do it in college, it's the same skill set. So people will say, well, you're not going to use any of this stuff. And no, you're not going to be solving any problems, you know, calculus on the job unless that's your job. But for most people, that's not going to be your job. But those other skills you're going to do. Writing is key. Whether it's as simple as email communications across, you know, at your office, or whether it's emailing a client, putting together proposals, and creativity is also key now. So, you know, even when you're doing flyers for parties, think about that. I mean, it sounds funny, but flyers for parties and different things, we have to figure out, how am I going to attract people's attention? It's marketing. And whether or not you go into the marketing field, you have to always market because you want people's attention. So you have to figure out creative ways. If you're pitching an idea for a new product in your office, or a new idea or something you want people to pay attention to, how do you market it? How do you be creative about it? How do you clearly convey a message so that they get it? These are all skills that, you know, you practice every day in your organizations, in the classroom. Networking with faculty is the same as networking with professionals. You know, it's all going to translate. So everything that you do, but again, the more that you do, the more entrepreneurial you are, which is a key thing. So whether or not you want to go into business for yourself, you're always going to have to be entrepreneurial in terms of being self-assertive, getting information that you want, creating opportunities that you need to see happen. If you sort of are that person that's going to stand back and wait for stuff, you might be waiting your whole life and never see what you want. This type of person said, I need to see this happen. I'm going to give myself 6 months. I'm going to make it happen. And then, even if it doesn't happen in 6 months, after those 6 months, you're closer than that person who is just standing there waiting for something to happen, and it hasn't happened.
How would you prepare, if you want a higher degree, how would you prepare financially now if you want to pursue a higher degree?
Don't buy anything. No, to be perfectly honest, preparing for a higher degree, you don't want to pay for that higher degree. That's the honest truth. Whatever you can do to get that higher degree free of charge. So you want to get the best grades possible, do the most things, travel abroad, whatever opportunities there are that set you apart from other people, to give you life experiences and to help build your portfolio, your personal record. That's what will allow you to go and do other things, and people will say, we want to give you a fellowship, we want to give you a scholarship. Email this guy right here. No, seriously, email this guy right here and show up next Wednesday and get into Berkeley. Talk to them about your story and go to Berkeley and get them to pay for it. That's how you want. You don't want to pay for anything. Don't ever pay for anything. Get other people to pay for it. Any other questions? Yes.
I think back on your point of asking people for help. I know myself personally, I've never been good at it, or just try to make it on my own scraps.
This brother needs help. Seriously, he needs help. Go ahead.
How do you balance asking for help and wanting to really try to make it on your own, especially
After you get the help, then you make it on your own. Step one is knowing what you need to do. And then you go plug through it and try to do it on your own. But if somebody shows you, if I'm trying to go get an iced tea later, I'm going to ask for help. I need to, because I don't want to just start walking. I don't know where I am. I'm going to ask for help. And then they'll say, go this way. And then I'm going to do the work, and I'm going to go that way. They're not going to walk for me. I'm going to start walking. And I'm going to at least know which way am I going to go to get this iced tea. That's how it works.
What would you say are the differences between looking for a scholarship for taking a master's degree and the scholarship for undergraduate studies?
I mean, with a master's degree, well, most scholarships and fellowships are going to want to look at a PhD program. I mean, there are master's level scholarships out there. It's not that much different. I mean, either way, you just have to always put your best foot forward. I mean, you really want to take care of yourself, figure out, how do I make my portfolio go to the back of the book, the learnhigher.com, by the back cover, that has all the links. So definitely stay plugged into the book because there's going to be a lot of resources online, and that's going to be how we continue to build our relationship together. So thanks for having me, and for reception.
Thank you everyone for coming. Don't run out, because for those of you who know Janet Turby, she was very considerate, and she said, it's raining and they're coming out, and she said they're going to want a snack. She said like a cup of tea and coffee, and I was like, whatever. But she was insistent that all of you would want cookies and coffee and punch. So please take the refreshments, but also take the time to either get your book signed or talk to Brian or each other, start networking. Doing what we're supposed to be doing. And one other thing about, because he's not doing the plug, I'm doing the plug, the Facebook option. I know that I use Facebook all for personal stuff and to play Farmville. But I remember that in February, when we had returned to school last February, I was tired. I had an infant, a newborn, and I was back to teaching, and I was back to doing a lot of things for the job that I had. And I was tired, like beyond tired. You have no idea. I know some people go all-nighters, but you don't know how tired you can be as a new mom. And so I would log into Facebook, and Brian would have these postings that he told me later his students were doing. And it was successful graduates from the University of Pennsylvania who happened to be African American. And, at first I was reading the stories because I knew some of the people, and I was like, oh, I know that, right? As a historian, I was like, I know everything. But then the stories got more interesting, and then when I found out that the students were doing this, I became captivated, and every day I wanted to read the story. And I kept emailing him, like, where did you get this? How did you get the students to do this? And so I was being inspired in February, and little did I know, a lot of my friends from UPenn Raw spread out everywhere were thinking the same thing. They were actually thinking, this is the best thing that I have read all morning on Facebook. And it inspired me, and, it's just these things. You learn so much, you don't even realize it. You're impacting people, you don't even realize it. This is that online community that you all can take advantage of that obviously he and I did not have pre-internet. Imagine that, right? And we still became friends. You have potential for even more. So with that in mind, go enjoy your refreshments, get